This is Dr.RED Panda.
If you're exhausted, constantly behind, and still blaming yourself, listen carefully. What if I told you this isn't burnout, it's conditioning? You were taught to work harder, compete longer, and feel guilty for resting, because that keeps the system stable. I'm Dr. Red Panda, and today, I'm going to show you why so many people are working nonstop and still going nowhere. They told you to try harder. They lied. If you are feeling exhausted, frustrated, and secretly wondering why life keeps getting harder no matter how much effort you put in, listen closely. Because what you are experiencing is not a personal failure. It is a trap. You were told a simple story growing up. Work hard, be patient, follow the rules, and you will be fine. That story worked for previous generations. But for you, that promise has quietly expired. And nobody bothered to tell you. What I'm about to say might sound unsettling or even dangerous, but it must be said clearly. The rules have changed, yet you are still being judged by the old ones. Look at what's happening around you. You're more educated than any generation before you. You work longer hours, switch jobs more often, hustle harder, and optimize every minute of your life. Yet somehow, stability feels further away. Buying a home feels unrealistic. Starting a family feels terrifying. And getting ahead feels like chasing a horizon that keeps moving backward. So what does the system tell you? Try harder. Wake up earlier. Side hustle. Fix your mindset. Notice how convenient that is, because if the problem is you, then the system is innocent. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Modern society doesn't need you to thrive. It only needs you to keep trying. Trying generates productivity. Trying generates content. Trying generates profit for someone else. You were trained to believe that constant effort equals moral worth. That rest is laziness. That slowing down means falling behind. So even when the rewards disappear, you keep running because stopping feels like failure. This isn't accidental. It's structural. The economy rewards asset holders, not labor. The attention economy profits from your anxiety, not your fulfillment. And the culture of endless self-improvement ensures you blame yourself instead of questioning the game. That quiet sense of shame you feel when you're tired, that guilt when you rest, that fear that you're somehow falling behind an invisible standard, those aren't personal flaws. They're features. You were never meant to feel satisfied, only motivated enough to keep going. Once you see the truth, you can no longer remain blind to it. Because the real crisis of our generation isn't laziness. It's the realization that we followed. The game was rewritten, and you were never told. To understand why so many people feel trapped today, you have to see the game for what it actually is, not what you were told it was. For most of modern history, society ran on a relatively simple equation. Effort led to progress. You worked hard, gained experience, earned stability, and slowly built a life. It wasn't fair, but it was predictable. And predictability creates motivation. That equation no longer holds. Not because you failed, but because the system itself was quietly rewritten. Let's start with the most important shift no one likes to talk about: the separation of effort from reward. In today's world, massive rewards no longer come from working harder. They come from ownership, leverage, and scale. If you own assets, your money grows while you sleep. If you own platforms, attention flows to you automatically. If you control algorithms, you decide who is seen and who is invisible. But if all you can offer is your time and effort, no matter how skilled, educated, or disciplined you are, you're playing a losing game. And here's the brutal part. You were never taught this distinction. Instead, you were trained to believe that personal effort is the highest virtue, even in a system that increasingly doesn't reward it. This creates a psychological trap. When rewards disappear, the mind doesn't blame the structure, it blames the self. You assume you're not doing enough, not optimizing enough, not disciplined enough. So you work more, you learn more, you grind more, and yet the gap keeps widening. That gap isn't accidental. Modern systems are designed to extract value from participation, not fulfillment. Your labor fuels companies you'll never own. Your attention fuels platforms that monetize your anxiety. Your data trains systems that replace you, all while the cultural narrative tells you, just keep going. This is where the feeling of being stuck really comes from. You're not failing to move forward. You're running inside a loop, and the loop is reinforced psychologically. Social media constantly exposes you to people who appear to be winning effortlessly. Algorithms amplify extremes: wealth, beauty, success, making the average life feel like failure. Meanwhile, the cost of basic milestones, housing, healthcare, education, keeps rising faster than effort can compensate. So what do people do? They internalize the pressure. They turn their entire identity into productivity. They confuse being busy with being valuable. They measure their worth by output, not meaning. And when exhaustion finally hits, they don't ask, is this system broken? They ask, what's wrong with me? That question is the real trap. Because a system that convinces you the problem is internal never has to defend itself. This is why burnout, anxiety, and quiet despair are exploding. Not because people are weaker, but because they're more aware. They can feel the contradiction between the promise they were given and the reality they're living. You were promised progress, but you were given pressure. You were promised opportunity, but you were given competition without ceilings. You were promised freedom, but you were given responsibility without power. And the most dangerous part? The system doesn't collapse when you realize this. It only collapses when you stop participating blindly. Which raises a question that most people avoid because it's terrifying. If effort alone is no longer enough, if the old map no longer leads anywhere, then how do you move forward without destroying yourself in the process? That's what we need to talk about next. Building meaning after you see the truth. Once you see how the system really works, there's no going back. You can't unknow what you now understand. That blind effort is no longer a guarantee, that constant productivity is not the same as a meaningful life, and that many of the rules you were judged by were never designed for your benefit. At this point, most people fall into one of two traps. The first is collapse. They become cynical, disengaged, numb. If it's all rigged, they think, why try at all? This leads to endless scrolling, quiet despair, and the slow erosion of self-respect. The second trap is rebellion without direction. They reject everything: work, discipline, structure, without replacing it with anything real. It feels freeing at first, but quickly turns into chaos and instability. Neither path leads anywhere. The real work begins with a harder idea. Meaning doesn't disappear when systems fail. Responsibility shifts inward. For most of history, meaning was outsourced. Religion told you who you were. Family told you what mattered. Society told you what success looked like. Those structures are fading. And without them, many people aren't unmotivated, they're unanchored. This is why so many feel empty even while doing everything right. They're executing a script that no longer belongs to them. Rebuilding meaning doesn't start with ambition. It starts with subtraction. Before asking what should I achieve, you have to ask, what am I no longer willing to sacrifice my life for? Attention is the first battleground. A mind constantly pulled by notifications, outrage, comparison, and noise cannot feel grounded. Reducing input isn't laziness, it's resistance. When the noise fades, uncomfortable questions surface. Who am I without constant output? What do I care about when no one is watching? What kind of suffering am I actually willing to endure? Meaning is not discovered, it's constructed through small, chosen actions, through competence built slowly, through internal reward instead of external validation. Doing difficult things you respect yourself for doing, especially when no one is watching. These actions don't scale. They don't go viral. That's why the system ignores them. But they rebuild something essential, a life lived from the inside out. You don't escape the system by rejecting it. You escape it by becoming selective. Participate where it serves your values. Withdraw where it erodes them. Stop measuring yourself by metrics designed to keep you insecure. Start measuring alignment between what you believe, what you do, and who you're becoming. If you've been feeling lost, exhausted, or quietly angry, this is why. You weren't weak. You weren't lazy. You were navigating a new world with an old map. And for the first time in history, no one is coming to hand you a new one. So let me ask you something, and take a moment before answering. What feels broken in your life right now? Is it work, money, motivation, direction, or that quiet sense that you're living someone else's script? If you're willing, write it in the comments. Not to be fixed, but to be named. And if you've already taken even one small step that brought clarity or meaning, share that too. Someone reading your words might realize they're not as alone as they thought. We're all learning how to draw our own maps now, and the conversation itself is where that rebuilding begins. And that's a wrap for this episode of the video. I'm Dr. Panda. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Until next time, take care.